What's going on, everybody? My name is Tomas. This is the BIZON Box. It's an external graphics card option that is primarily focused for use on Mac OS X. What is it, you may ask? It's essentially a tool that gives compatible Macintosh computers a way to harness a desktop GPU's processing power for gaming, computational work, and what I'm most excited about, creative applications for like creative projects and stuff like that via Thunderbolt 2. That's not to say that the BIZON Box doesn't work on Windows-based machines, because it definitely does. The BIZON Box retails for $549 USD at the time of this video. Your purchase includes a 200-watt power supply, which is external, a half-meter Thunderbolt 2 cable, and a 1-year warranty at no extra cost. With that, you're able to upgrade to a 300-watt power supply, a longer 2-meter Thunderbolt 2 cable, and you're able to extend your warranty up to 2 years for $99, $44, and $49 respectively. BIZON Tech allows you to build a complete setup like this with a variety of GPU offerings. The building process is pretty simple. The GPU I decided to go for in this video and what's included in my chassis is the GTX 970. In total, and what you see in this video, I paid around $940 USD. I know the GTX 970 isn't the most current of GPUs out there, but for my usage, I found it to be the most cost-effective option. If you're wondering if BIZON Tech will offer some of the new GPUs that were announced recently, they are preparing for the GTX 1070 and GTX 1080 GPUs as soon as they become available. You'll be able to build it and include it within your order. Before we get into testing, I want to talk to you about some of the reasons why I considered and why I wanted a BIZON Box. The true power behind using one is the performance increases I would realize using professional applications. More specifically, Adobe Premiere, After Effects, Audition, and Photoshop in my case. Also included in that listing, but not something I personally use, is Final Cut Pro 10 and DaVinci Resolve. BIZON Tech claims the BIZON Box is able to offer a 9 times boost in video editing processes, as you're able to use the external GPU to do most of the heavy lifting. BIZON Box unlocks the power of CUDA support for OS X users that only have integrated graphics or are bound by Apple's inclusion of AMD graphics on some of their most recent computers. Now I'm able to utilize CUDA once again in the acceleration on my MacBook Pro that only has Intel integrated graphics, and it will also allow me to install and enable CUDA acceleration on my Mac Pro that is bound by and powered by AMD. Some other applications you will see workflow improvements are in the 3D rendering and modeling realm. Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, Octane Render, and SketchUp, for example, will also see performance improvements. Now, for you gamers out there, BIZON Box allows you to play games at maximum settings without issue. Now, I want to preface this video by saying I will not be testing games outside of the Unigine Heaven benchmark application in this video, because let's face it, if you're a serious gamer, then you probably don't game on a Mac. But just know, with BIZON Box, it is definitely now a possibility. Another hot topic lately is virtual reality, and Macs are not primed to run full-blown VR setups. With BIZON Box, you're now able to use Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and other VR setups on your Mac. Now, that's provided you have the GPU that you're using within BIZON Box will support those tasks. Probably the greatest thing about BIZON Box is it is a true plug-and-play solution for using a GPU externally. All you need to do is connect the chassis to your machine via the Thunderbolt 2 port, install the provided drivers, and you're ready to go. Now, you'll have to run through a quick install process, but the tool that BIZON Tech provides you makes it really easy. It's universally supported and works both on OS X and Windows as well. So it's a great process. They did a great job with it. Getting into testing this thing, I want to outline what I'm going to be testing with the BIZON Box. I'm primarily going to focus on how this setup improves my workflow using a 2015 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. My laptop is Apple's baseline configuration, that is the most recent one, with a quad-core 2.2 gigahertz Intel i7, 16 gigs of RAM, and no dedicated graphics. BizonBOX supports other Macs as well. If you're wondering if your machine and setup is supported, hit the link in the description of the video where you will find a list of supported Apple computers. Now, with all of that out of the way, I want to do a demonstration in this video on how you're able to achieve significant performance increases when comparing to a Mac with just integrated graphics available to you. I'll run all of my benchmarks on the MacBook Pro first, and then I'll run those same benchmarks with the same settings with the included BizonBOX. One thing to note, before we run these tests, I will need to use an external monitor to run the benchmarking tools through the BizonBOX. And the reason behind this is that it's a picture output limitation of OS X, as it only supports external screen output only. Essentially what that means, OS X will only see the dedicated GPU if you're running through an external monitor. This is not a limitation of the BizonBOX, as Windows-based machines make it possible to display either way. Now, if your application supports GPU selection, like Adobe Creative Cloud and Final Cut Pro 10 do, you will not need an external display and you don't need to worry about it. All right, so let's talk about testing this system. I used 3 different benchmarking systems, Cinebench R15, and I only tested OpenGL, NovaBench, and Unigine Heaven 4.0. Looking at the Cinebench and R15 comparisons, you can see that the BizonBOX helped my MacBook Pros perform significantly higher. It was getting around 80 frames per second with the OpenGL test versus 30-ish frames per second. Taking a look at the NovaBench, they're pretty even there. And then Unigine Heaven, using the BizonBOX, completely smashes just the Intel's integrated graphics only. I was getting around 6 frames per second with just the max settings on Unigine Heaven. The next thing that I took note of during all that testing was decibel level. And this is an average between the two. As you can see, the Intel integrated graphics, the decibel level of the fan noise on the MacBook Pro was significantly higher than what you would experience if you were using the BizonBOX. Transcode, I took MP4 and transcoded it to Cineform. If you're looking at this and you see that the Intel integrated graphics performed better, your eyes are not fooling you, because they did. It performed a little bit better in the sense of time. These were measured in seconds, so it took around 271 seconds for the Intel integrated graphics to transcode 2 1-minute clips to Cineform. So the load wasn't lightened in the sense of transcoding, and I think I can explain this by saying that transcoding is also a CPU intensive task. CUDA acceleration is also just a support element to CPU tasks, because I did run this test a couple of times and I produced the same results every time. The next thing was a render, and it came to be no surprise to me. So around 57 seconds total with the BizonBOX versus 114 seconds with Intel integrated graphics. And last but not least, I did an export between the two. The BizonBOX performed better, but not so much so. Around 238 seconds versus 263 seconds. Now I used Adobe Media Encoder's preset for YouTube, so that's a 40 megabits per second file. If you're interested in more benchmarking numbers, I will link you to BizonTech's website, where they run through a plethora of different benchmarks and comparisons with Mac OS X and Windows. Now that I've shown you all the benchmarking differences and the performance increases that you can achieve with the BizonBOX, I think this is an appropriate time to talk to you about the power behind this. Now, the chassis itself is $549. So if you were to purchase a top-of-the-line MacBook Pro 2015 model and then upgrade to some discrete graphics, that costs you $500 alone. Normal people that are outside of like the tech community and editors and stuff like that don't purchase top-of-the-line MacBooks because they're extremely expensive. Now, you can save money on your purchases and upgrades with the MacBook Pro line, that you can purchase the baseline and know that you can come home to dedicated graphics, in the sense that you're running it through a GPU that you've selected for yourself. Now, this is huge because it will save you money in the long run. And yeah, granted, you're going to have to buy your own GPU in addition to the BizonBOX, but that leaves you the option to upgrade. Now, the only downside to that is that you're going to have to be sitting at a stationary desk with external, with some sort of power outlet to power the BizonBOX. Now, that can be seen as a bad thing if you're considering purchasing this and you're always on the move. I would say this wouldn't be a good option for you. But if you're always coming back to your desk and docking your MacBook and then working, BizonBOX is a no-brainer for me. That's why I purchased it, because I also use this with my Mac Pro, and it allows me to harness the CUDA acceleration. The Mac Pro only has AMD graphics cards. Now, I can get my CUDA acceleration with external use. Not only do I have that, I can upgrade in the future to different GPUs and change them out. That only improves my workflow and my work processes. So now I'll get off my soapbox and close this video out by saying, feel free to check out Bizon Tech and the BizonBOX and see if it works for you. Now that will be linked in the description of the video right below that like button. Well, that about does it for me in this one. If you like this video, please feel free to hit that thumbs up button. If not, hit the other one. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I am Tomas, and I'll see you in the next one.